Here's one from G, who says, "Morning, Mike. Starmer saying stable energy prices. Yeah, stable as in permanently high. What an absolute plank." That is the problem, isn't it? I mean, he said before the election, Rakib, you know, we're going to put a cap on energy prices. We're going to make sure that, unlike the Tories, your energy bills will not go up. And what's happened? They've gone up. And they will go up again because there's going to be a sort of calibrating of energy prices between now and Christmas. But, you know, this idea that somehow we were going to save 300 quid has just gone out the window, like it never was ever actually said.
No, absolutely. And I think the one thing I'll say is that the Prime Minister is a specialist when it comes to broken promises.
He really is. He's getting very good at it. Let's have a look at some clips from the United States of America this morning, though, because Donald Trump is busy getting on with the business of running the country. He's appointing various...
Some very interesting appointments.
Some very interesting. He's appointed Mark Rubio to be Secretary of State. He's appointed Elon Musk as the Chief of Government Efficiency. Here's what Elon had to say before the election.
Take a look at all the federal agencies and say, do we really need whatever it is, 428 federal agencies? Because there's so many that people have never even heard of, and that have overlapping areas of responsibility. We should, I don't know, probably we should get... I mean, there are more federal agencies than there are years since the establishment of the United States, which means that we've created more than one federal agency per year on average. That seems a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So we should have... That seems crazy. I think we should be able to get away with 99 agencies. I don't know. That seems a lot like a lot of agencies.
It's a lot,
Yeah.
That's him talking to Tucker Carlson. If I was working in one of those agencies, I'd be a bit worried.
No,
because Elon Musk is coming for you, and he's going to go, "What do you do?" You know, I mean, because that's what you need. You need somebody to walk into some of these government organisations, like we have them here, and say, "Sorry, what do you do?
Yeah.
What's your point? What's the purpose? Get out." You know, most of them don't do anything. Most of the people who work for the government in any country, including this one, don't do anything.
No, and I think that one thing that's very clear is that the Trump-Vance administration is going to be a bureaucracy-slashing one.
Yeah.
I think that's very much the intention.
Well, because big government has become a problem. The Biden administration built it up even more. You know, we've had the same problem running for years and years and years. I mean, look at all the quangos we've got. And, I don't give the Tories a pass on this. The Tories are just as bad
at
setting up, you know, more... They hired something like 25,000 more people during COVID to deal with COVID. And they haven't got rid of them yet. Because even though we haven't got COVID anymore, we've still got the 25,000 civil servants.
No, absolutely. And I think that there has to be a point here that you have to look at those different bureaucratic agencies and see how they're delivering.
Yeah, absolutely.
How efficient are they? How productive are they? And I think that it's important that you have that examination in place.
Totally. Let's have a look at Marco Rubio. He's a man that most people probably won't have heard of in this country, but he's been quite a big figure in politics in America for quite a long time.
For some time, yeah.
And I think at one point he even ran as a candidate for the presidency at some point. But here he is being hijacked by some Palestinian type sympathisers.
Senator Rubio, will you call for ceasefire?
No, I will not.
Gaza?
On the contrary.
Senator Rubio,
are you filming it?
Wait,
I want you guys to get this. I want them to destroy every element of Hamas they can get their hands on. These people are vicious animals who did horrifying crimes, and I hope you guys post that.
And what about the civilians that are being killed every day?
Hamas should stop hiding behind civilians, putting civilians in the way. Hamas knew that this was going to lead to this, so Hamas should stop building their military installations underneath hospitals.
So you don't care that 15,000 have died? You don't care about the babies that are being killed every day?
Horrifying. I think it's terrible, and I think Hamas is 100% to blame.
And he's absolutely right, isn't he? Because Hamas is 100% to blame. There's no question that, you know, hiding missiles underneath children's nurseries, hiding missiles underneath hospitals, you know, using human shields from their own people. You know, Hamas is responsible for killing more Palestinians than Israel has ever done. Well,
I think the point that we made that ultimately in the UK, Hamas is a proscribed terrorist organisation.
Right.
And I think that...
Don't forget to mention that to the Metropolitan Police, who don't seem to be too sure.
And I think this is the point, that I think people struggle to appreciate the fact that you can be both supportive of Palestinian statehood, sovereignty and self-determination, but also be anti-Hamas.
Yeah, right.
Not remotely supportive of a proscribed terrorist organisation. And I think that that's something that the pro-Palestine movement, if it wants to be truly successful and generate widespread support, then it needs to condemn terrorist activities.
And it doesn't do it enough, does it, at the end of the day?
In my view, it could do more.
Yeah. I mean, when you see these pro-Palestinian marches that go on, you always see support for Hamas. as an organisation, as freedom fighters, as the resistance. You know, that's not what they are.
And I think
the
elements of those pro-Palestine demonstrations have been under-policed. I think there's no two ways about that.
No, totally. And we'll come to the police as well, because there's an amazing story on the front page of the Telegraph today about Alison Pearson, good friend of this station, good friend of Julie Hartley-Brewers. Julie's going to have her on later on
And that's perhaps a case of over-policing.
Yeah, and this is Alison Pearson, front page of the Telegraph. The headline says, Telegraph writer in Kafkaesque hate crime inquiry. She reveals in a column today in the paper about how she got a visit from the police on Armistice Day, Sunday, Remembrance Sunday, basically saying that she was being reported for some kind of non-crime hate incident, which they wouldn't explain. They say basically that it was referring to some kind of tweet that somebody had complained about, but they wouldn't tell her which tweet, and they wouldn't tell her who the person who had complained was, and she was left to be rather sort of surprisingly shocked and stunned by having police officers turning up at her home address on a quiet Sunday morning. Unbelievable.
I think it's absolutely remarkable, and I think when you see the performance of police forces in general, and that you see the de facto decriminalisation of all kinds of crimes. I think shoplifting in high streets would be a fine example.
A friend of mine told me the other day he was in a high street shop, a chain that everybody would recognise if I said who they were. It was a Next shop actually, and there was a guy there. He said watching him, he's shoving a load of jumpers underneath the jumper he was wearing, and he simply looked ridiculous because everybody could see that he'd done it. Walked out of the shop, all the alarms went off, and the security guards just watched him leave.
Well, I think it's absolutely remarkable.
And didn't do anything. And nobody stopped him.
And I think that de facto criminalisation of shoplifting on high streets has been hugely damaging for businesses.
Of course.
It really has been.
And the cost alone in having to get security, but also having to tell those security men, don't get involved in case you get stabbed.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, I'm sure this will be the story across much of the country, is that when you look at council tax, the council tax which is devoted to local police forces is increasing year after year.
Right.
But what is the quality of service?
Well, it's absolute rubbish, isn't it? But here's what I have to say about Alison Pearson and the case that they were involved in. Basically, they refused to reveal the accuser's name. When she said to them, who is the accuser? They said, no, it's not an accuser, it's the victim. So somebody's reported Alison Pearson anonymously. Essex Police said this, that officers had opened an investigation under Section 17 of the Public Order Act 1986 relating to material allegedly likely or intended to cause racial hatred. I mean, this is madness, isn't it?
Oh,
I know Alison Pearson. She will not ever do anything that's intended to cause racial hatred. Police said, we are investigating a report passed to us by another force. The report relates to a social media post which was subsequently removed. An investigation is now being carried out under Section 17 of the Public Order Act. I mean, you know, sorry. I mean, you've got proper criminals to arrest.
Well, and I think that one thing I'd say is that where we're really falling behind is tackling neighbourhood crime. Yeah. You know, sort of theft, burglary would be another one as well. Yeah. I'd rather see local police forces focus on the bread and butter of tackling those crimes. I
backside of everybody a few weeks ago because I got my phone stolen from a guy on a moped, right? I did a piece for the Telegraph on it, did a bit of research. 1,000 phones a day, or sorry, a week, are being stolen in London alone. In the capital city of the great British Isles, 1,000 phones being stolen by scumbags every day. The police do nothing about it.
No, absolutely. And I think the problem is that if the police don't tackle those kind of crimes, it'll put tourists off in terms of visiting London. It will. And we wouldn't want to see that.
No, absolutely right. It's very, very dangerous. Here's a good one for you. Page 6 of The Sun. 7 million people working in the UK were born abroad. It now means that 1 in 5 jobs in Britain is now held by a foreign-born worker. Now, some people might say that's a good thing.
Well, some people might say it shows that we're an enterprising and dynamic economy.
I guess it depends on the sort of jobs that they're doing, right? Because the difficulty is 1.4 million non-EU workers who have arrived since the COVID pandemic began are all working, but they might be working in low-paid jobs, which means they're also in receipt of benefits.
I think what we have to talk about here really is, and I'm not in the business of commodifying people,
no, but this is your sort of area of expertise.
Exactly, and I think the issue is what kind of jobs are they doing? Yeah. How skilled are they? Yeah. And how much are they providing in terms of paying tax? Yeah.
And are they net contributors to the system, or have they got also loads of dependents who are also having to be looked after?
To what extent are they net contributors? To what extent are they truly economically self-sufficient? Right. I think, and how many dependents they have as well.
Yeah.
I think all of those points need to be made when you're making these kind of calculations.
Yes, exactly. We're going to be talking to Rupert Lowe coming up a little bit later on in the show, who's going to be telling us exactly what figures he's managed to get out of the Home Office with regard to the breakdown, if you like, of asylum seekers stroke immigrants coming to this country and either working, not working, you know, being put up in hotels, committing crime. Because again, the business of government in this country seems to be to conceal the truth from us so that we're not able to draw our own conclusions. You know, if you ask the Home Office, you know, can you please give us a breakdown of crimes committed by nationality? Oh, no, we can't do that. Because why? Oh, because it might cause you to get upset. And it's like, well, just tell us the truth. Give us the figures.
I think that the issue there is if you were to do that kind of analysis, you'll clearly see that some migrant groups perform very well.
Yeah.
And so others don't perform
absolutely.
so well. And I think that
and there's nothing wrong with saying that.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with saying that.
And it would be good if we could say that.
And it might even be the case, and it will be the case that there'll be some migrant groups that are even performing better than the white British mainstream in the UK economy. I think that's perfectly reasonable to see those patterns.
I think so. G says this on Gary Lineker: I don't understand why he's not allowed to have a political opinion and air those opinions. Are you saying that because you don't agree with his opinion, then he must be silenced? No, of course I'm not saying that. He's not airing his political opinion whilst he is presenting Match of the Day. Actually, that's not true. I don't always agree with people's opinions, including yours, but you and others have a right to them. Well, you might remember, if you want to go back in time, G, to the World Cup in Qatar, where Gary Lineker opened the BBC's coverage of Qatar with a little piece about human rights in Qatar, which he insisted apparently on doing. Now, if that's not doing something political, I don't know what is. It wasn't about the football. It wasn't about what he thought about who was playing up front for England or indeed for Qatar. It was all about his view of human rights in Qatar. He didn't mention while he was doing that little soliloquy and his little monologue that he'd once worked for the Qatari national sports TV channel called beIN Sport, which is part of Al Jazeera. He didn't mention that he was paid a bucket load of money by the Qataris, who are, in many people's views, very fast and loose on human rights. However, the point is this: the BBC have got rules. The reason that Gary Lineker got himself into trouble with the BBC is because the BBC had their own guidelines, which he kept breaching, even though they kept saying to him, you're not supposed to have political views if you're working for the BBC. Now that he's not working for the BBC on Match of the Day, he's more than welcome to have as many views as he likes. But the other problem we've got is that they've now taken his podcast, which is outside of the BBC, now inside the BBC. So BBC Sounds is now going to publish his podcast. So where that leaves him in terms of his opinions, I don't know.
No, absolutely. And I think that the idea that when he has been on BBC duty, that it's been completely free of any kind of political expression, I think is somewhat suspect.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely right. How about this from Kenneth? Morning, Mike. Ken in Ascot here. As it's such a great show, I now go to bed an hour early so I can listen to live to all of it. The first hour guests you have on are brilliant. Rakib Ehsan and Peter Plex, they are now legends in our household. This early start.
They're very kind words.
6 a.m. It's worth getting up for. It is absolutely.
It's an impressive commitment to go to bed early.
By 10 o'clock in the morning, you know everything you need to know. It's as simple as that.